Woohoo! Yay! Theories of Everything with Curt Jaimungal.
Welcome. Thank you.
So used to being the host. I love it.
How are you doing, man?
So good.
Did you just come from meditating?
Life is a meditation, my brother.
Did you just explicitly meditate? Like close your eyes and stay still for a couple minutes or no?
That is what usually is what leads up to meditation being what you are. So usually you go and practice meditation in order for you to end up having like a contemplative fitness AI that's perpetually running, in a sense. So you no longer need to go and separately meditate. It just becomes what you are perpetually. And so I feel like I've just recently sort of made that transition as well, where the amount of sovereignty that you end up having, the supreme authority over what used to be like this big web of conditioning and triggers and sensory perception, you gain so much sovereignty because you're able to watch the arising and passing of phenomena. And it's just regaining that awareness. And it's so beautiful. So, yeah. Yeah.
So you don't agree with these spiritual teachers who have been meditating for years and continue to do so? You think that they should be moved past that?
Well, one of the ways that Buddha talked about this is as an undistracted non-meditation. So undistracted, so you're not fixating, and it's a non-meditation because you're not meditating. It's just an undistracted, perpetual, thought-free wakefulness. Does that make sense?
I understand.
Okay. Yeah. So I feel like when you're not going straight to the end goal of thought-free wakefulness, then you're almost perpetuating yourself to need to sit on the cushion more and more. So work your way into a place where you can experience a contemplative fitness AI that's basically running in the background where just nothing can trigger you, but we're always working on basically deconditioning ourselves. That's what the art is in many ways. Yeah.
Okay. Forgive my pettifogging nature, but what do you mean by contemplative fitness AI? What's meant by the word fitness in there?
Curt. He's already taken the interview over. I love you.
Oh, well, just for the audience.
Yes.
I don't know how many people are watching, but for the people who are watching, I'm much more comfortable as an interviewer than an interviewee. I feel like my predominant position on most topics is just, I don't know. I'm decerebrate in most places, and that includes math and physics, which is my background. So I don't know. I imagine that much of what you'll get is extreme uncertainty and dubiousness from myself.
You know what's fascinating, and we can put a little flag in the fitness, in contemplative fitness AI, and potentially circle back to that because Because I feel like where Curt and I have so much overlap, because this will probably end up being more of a conversation, is that since 2017, I had this list of all of these insanely thought-provoking questions about the nature of reality. And then the number one thing that came up was, how do I go and ask the smartest people that I have access to all of these thought-provoking questions about what the nature of reality is? And in a sense, would you say that that's what you're doing?
What I'm trying to do is understand the landscape of theories of everything, which involves speaking to some experts in some sense, the idea behind a theory of everything is synonymous with what is the nature of reality. So in that respect, yes. Although I'm not particularly focused on speaking to people like these cognoscentes, I'm mainly interested in the theories, and they're an avenue to not only an income source of mine. So there's obviously a monetary element to it, though in the beginning there's nothing, and even still, it's not like it's paying all the bills. But there's obviously that. There's obviously some making a name for myself, but there's also there's so many questions I have, and I wanted to title the YouTube channel Office Hours because I come from an academic background. And in academia, what you have are office hours. A professor sets, let's say, Wednesdays from 4 to 8, and you can go talk to them about your homework, about whatever questions come to mind. So for me, I treat it more like office hours. Office hours that I film, and that's the predominant quality.
So there's both this theories of everything that end up being a landscape of how self-awareness perceives the nature of its reality, and then creating some sort of a map about what is in that landscape across the planet of what people think the point of all of this is. And then another part of it is it's like office hours regarding getting these brilliant people on and then having them answer these questions that are not only about adding them to this theories of everything landscape map, but also about poking and prodding and getting new insights. One of the most important things that I've noticed from the guests that come on the show is, and you've actually filmed this and included them in your intro several times, is when your guests have said, you know, Curt, this has been one of my best interviews. And that's because of your poking and prodding and enabling. It's like tennis, where you're enabling them to further increase their insights around their own ideas.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that's a huge compliment. Like I do my best to prepare. I prepare like mad, like you wouldn't believe. Like it drains me how much I prepare. So when they say that it shows, which I'm always insecure about if any of it shows, not that I'm trying to have it show, but it would be great if even a modicum of it showed. It's great that some of that's exuded and that they acknowledge it.
Your essence reminds me a little bit of Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, I get that. I used to get that more. One of the reasons seems to be that I'm extremely careful with what I say. I'm trying to make sure that what I'm saying is my own word and that it's not unfairly adopted from someone else without my conscious effort trying to make it my own. And then another reason is obvious. It's that I've watched plenty of him and I don't know how to stop someone that I've seen from influencing my life on a micro level. For example, there's also Tony Robbins in me because I used to watch plenty of Tony Robbins. When I did stand-up, it was like Seinfeld and Colin Quinn because those are my favorite ones. And it's not like I'm trying to copy them. It's just that there's no way for me to export them completely.
And this might be quite specific to today's interaction. I've noticed it a little bit across your other interviews, but I've also noticed different emanations of what your unique expression is. But there seems to be, and correct me if I'm wrong or just expand on this for us, but have you felt sort of your own sense of identity burst outside of your skin?
Yeah.
Yeah, and walk us through that. Yeah.
It usually happens around the 1 hour mark in an interview. It's mainly when I get comfortable with myself. So right now, I'm somewhat habitudinous because I haven't slept for, well, I have slept, but I have slept poorly for the past 5 days or so. And usually once I'm in the flow, that's when it comes out. Not that I'm not in the flow, man. Like, I respect and love you. It just takes a while. And I just came off from a previous podcast, so that one somewhat exhausted me. And I have another one right after this. And then I got to like sleep in a river of opium. Not, this is a joke, but like just like completely bathe myself in silk and satin and just go to sleep for like 12 hours.
Yeah, that was one of the things that we were talking about before we went on, was just respectfully rejuvenating yourself for being able to actually actualize this channel at its fullest potential, because sometimes what we think is doing all of the sessions, and this was my case also, especially in 2018 and 2019, was doing even at these conferences like 10 shows in a day, like 10 1 to 2 hour shows in a day. And that was fucking crazy. And that type of energy is cool and it has its place, but but there's also the energy for the rejuvenation. But just to play on this question a little bit more, you've had people like Rupert Spira on the show, and you've had these more mystically literate via direct experience, when people like Rupert tell you that you are God, you've just forgotten that you are God. Does that resonate with you?
It does in some sense, and it doesn't in another. So I think if I had that realization, it would rock me to my core. In some sense, I can intellectually understand it, but that's the issue. That's another reason why.
Okay, let's play on this a little bit. So you have awareness, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So would you say that the mind is kind of like magic?
I don't know what you mean by that.
Like, are you blown away by the fact that you have the power to know?
Yes.
But just stay with that feeling a little bit more, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Where is this going?
We'll see. So this power to know, a quality that's enabling your perception right now, would you say that it's possible that we're habitually overlooking the profundity of consciousness?
There's something Wittgenstein said, and I know I quote him perhaps a bit too much, but he had something called clarificatory remarks, which are those aspects of reality that are most important but hidden because of their simplicity and familiarity.
Exactly.
Wittgenstein gets taken as the paragon of a rational atheist, but actually he was profoundly, deeply religious, and many people don't realize that. The reason why he didn't speak much about religion was because he had a quote which said, of what one cannot speak of precisely, one must be silent. And he had extreme religious veneration as he got older, to the point where I think his close friend Norman Malcolm said that the religiosity that characterized Wittgenstein was greater than that of people who consider themselves to be religious.
Beautiful. So you resonate with the notion that we might be perpetually, habitually overlooking what is so profound, which is the fact that we have the quality of the power to know, consciousness.
Well, I don't know if that's what's the most profound. I know it's somewhat profound. I don't know if it's the most. So there's another quote.
Somewhat profound.
There's a great idea from there's a great idea that the kingdom of God lays before men, but men do not see it.
Yes. Yes. See, you remind me, and I mentioned this to you, but you remind me so much of me, especially like right before like 6 months ago, where like this realization, Rupert was one of the most important people in catalyzing this realization. Basically what I see you doing, which is what I was doing, which is the eyeballs are faced outward and they're scraping the landscape of the nature of reality, looking for who are the people that know the most physics and that know the most math and that know the most about these different fields, neuroscience, philosophy. How can I sponge in what the peaks of these landscapes know and, take in all this information and refract it uniquely into a theory of everything? Well, you may not be doing that last part necessarily, but it does feel like you are to an extent. But then what the key switch is when rather than the eyeballs being protruded outward, trying to find the nature of reality, the eyeball turns on itself.
Have you played Bloodborne?
Wait, what is this?
Have you played Bloodborne? It's a Hidetaka Miyazaki game. Oh, Dark Souls. Have you heard of Dark Souls?
Oh, Dark Souls. Yes.
They had a game called Bloodborne, and in it, the characters who had true insight they would turn their eyes inside out, and put many eyes pointed toward the end.
Curt, you have the answer. It's right under your nose. You're pointing to it in different ways, from Wittgenstein to this Dark Souls. You're pointing at it in so many different ways. Truly, you are. You know that this is
Dark
it.
Souls. Yeah. Well, what's the answer?
You are it. You are it.
Okay, I don't understand what that means, Alan.
Like you are the nature of reality. Like you are the highest.
Okay, now what does that mean? Because I imagine if one is saying you, referring to me, then one can say that you referring to anyone, and thus it's all the highest, which also means it's all the lowest, which means it's all the same, which is the same as non-dualism, which to me, I don't see how. I have quite a few problems with non-dualism, though I skirt with it. One of them is I don't see it as anything. I don't see how it's not veiled nihilism.
Let's play with direct experience a little bit more. So you're conscious, and that, would you say that consciousness is formless? Would you say that the quality of the power to know, how water is wet, and like wetness is like a quality. Wetness is like a formless quality. Okay. And then like kind of like sweetness, right? Sweetness is like
a property. One can say it's a property or no?
Let's play with quality for now. Quality. And so now you have the power to know, which is also like a formless quality. Okay. So rather than the fixation externally on form, name, and shape, the eyeball has turned inward on itself and is now recognizing that this consciousness, awareness, the power to know is something so profound and so indescribable so formless that it's been overlooking. And now what you see is, Curt, might it be possible that if you look at consciousness without any attributes, so what does it look like to be consciousness without the costume of Curt, or consciousness without the costume of Rupert, or without the costume of Atlas?
I understand.
Oh, that does make sense. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now you see that consciousness without its costumes.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at it most upstream as just the formless power to know, that is what people are pointing at for the last millennia when they talk about the kingdom of God is within you. That this is the highest, the absolute, appearing for an exploration of infinite possibility.
I understand.
Okay. And so what holds you back? Is it like logic and reasoning, or what is the thing that kind of like holds you back from recognizing that this is the highest, coming to explore a possibility of infinity?
Well, like I said, if it's the highest, it's also the lowest. And so does one want to say that this is the lowest? And if one is not going to say it's the lowest, then why is it high and not low?
No, it's beautiful. So we see that today when we look at people not having their basic needs being met, and where we have war, and where we have famine, and where we have all of the worst catastrophic issues, they're happening here on the same planet that the absolute most ecstatic God realization is happening. So it's all happening here. This is all it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not necessarily even trying to create a juxtaposition.
Hold on. You're cutting off, and I want to make sure I'm hearing every single word. Do you mind repeating it?
Yeah, of course. So we see this manifestation of play, like what we're talking about, is both.
Hold on. We're seeing the manifestation of play. Okay.
Yes. And then that it's both exploring the archetypal hell at the same time as there's the exploration of the archetypal heaven.
Hold on, Alan, please. I want to make sure. Can you double check if the chat can hear you, or if it's just me that's hearing you cut in and out? People who are watching, can you hear Alan completely and clearly without break?
Oh, we love you, Brando. Thanks for your love.
Okay, so it's just myself. All right, well, sorry, continue.
Okay, well, let's see if... Can you hear me now, Curt?
I think that is my headphones. I apologize, man. Let me just...
No worries. We're going through all of the lovely... We love you guys. Thank you for your love.
It also may be that I have OBS running in the background. Sometimes that messes it up. Okay, do you mind speaking? Hello.
Yes, we are testing. Okay. Testing for Curt. Yeah. You guys are so kind. Look at all these lovely comments.
Thank you, everyone. Okay. All right, let's get back to this. So you were saying.
Okay, cool. Do you see all these lovely comments, Curt?
Man, they're only positive. It's just plaudits, and I appreciate it.
Well, because people love your channel, and they love what we've been doing on ours as well, and so it's a beautiful colliding, and cool. So did you hear that last sentence pretty clearly?
No.
Oh, you still didn't?
No, repeat it, please.
Oh, I mean the very recent one that I just said.
Yes. All this is clear. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so that if we play from the perspective of an infinite amount of possibility, and we are that which explores that infinite possibility. Okay. And so then we use these realities and consciousness as the mechanism to explore infinite potential. Are you still following? and that these realities have the archetype that you just described, which is the absolute hellishness as well as the absolute heaven simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
So you have tanks and murder and hanging people and famine at the same time that you have ecstasy and yachts and jetpacks and Thanksgiving dinners.
What privileges one over the other?
What privileges one over the other? Meaning, like, why would you get to do one of those and somebody else does another one? Like, why would
should one be pursued and the other not? So why should one not go around raping and pillaging and murdering and tormenting and causing anguish on a local or global level?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you intrinsically, you know the answer to that question. Like, every one of us intrinsically knows the answer to that question, because if you go back to what we've started with, which was that we share the power to know, we share consciousness, we share that same, if you get there, what happens is, and you can also see that externally, you're like, yeah, all the species share the same planet. So you can also see it externally at the same time, that you recognize that you actually create harm to yourself, to your own home, when you rape and pillage and do any of those horrible negative activities. But that's part of the exploration. It's part of the play. But so the more that you get the most metaphysical level, like you just had Chris Langan on the show. We were talking about that a little bit before we started. But when you take it from the most metaphysical level, which is out of an infinite amount of possibility, because when you truly grok infinity, you begin recognizing that an infinite amount of possibility, you can never come to the end of exploring. And this is basically what Kurt Gödel and Douglas Hofstadter and Donald Hoffman are talking about as well, is that you can't actually come to the truth that you are a PlayStation 5 playing infinite games, but you can't come to that truth from within Grand Theft Auto. So you're trying to find the truth that you're in PlayStation 5 playing infinite games, but you're trying to find it from within GTA.
Okay. So when people bring up Kurt Gödel, I want to know, what's the relationship between a first order language and our physical reality, or this reality? Because what Kurt Gödel was saying was extremely specific. It was with any axiomatic system strong enough to produce some qualities like arithmetic and so on. So what's the relationship between that? What's to say that reality has anything to do with that? It also is an extremely computational view of reality, and I don't think reality is necessarily computational. That's Penrose's entire argument, is that.
Okay, let's substitute the word computational with comprehensive. Are you comprehending reality right now?
If what you mean is, do I comprehend some aspects of reality? Like, am I understanding? Well, I would say I think I understand some things. Though
is the fundamental nature of consciousness to comprehend?
No. Why? You think it is? I would say the fundamental quality of consciousness is awareness, but that also is just a tautology, because it seems like you're substituting one word for a synonym.
So then would the fundamental nature of awareness be to comprehend?
Okay, you have to explain to me what you mean by comprehend.
You see, this is where I'm saying there's like a bit of that, like when you sort of like relax. I know.
I'm not being antagonistic in the least, Alan.
I know. I love you. I sense this though. I sense it in your essence. Like there's like this, like, give me the, this definition of comprehend. But I know intrinsically, like just like you said earlier, well, why wouldn't somebody just go and create violence and havoc? And the answer internally.
I'll object to that.
Okay.
Because there are obviously people who are driven by that, who think that is the highest good. And the example that I give frequently is 1206 with Genghis Khan, where he said that the highest good is to put my enemies' heads on a stick and rape their women. And that was the good to him. So it's not exactly obvious. And see, this is what I see the New Age community being driven by, this Pollyannic view of what humans are. But plenty of people are motivated by pointing down. They have a God and it's down. And I don't see the recognition of that in some of these non-dualist circles.
So how old is Genghis Khan again? 1,000 years old?
Almost 1,200 approximately is when he had his reign in Asia.
Okay. So 1,000 years ago, where was our level of self-awareness compared to now? That's another way to view that question. Because if you look at the level of self-awareness 1,000 years ago, that was more of the essence, where you could sort of say that I want to put my enemies' heads on sticks and I want to rape the women. And today, in modernity, with 8 billion people and the internet and computers, and we see the planet as one organism, and we see these conscious agents, aka humans, as this shared computational or comprehensive unit that then is what is exploring. So in a sense, you can't get away with that anymore. Self-awareness has increased to the point where you can no longer get away with having this drastic level of malevolence and violence.
Okay. Well, what you're saying, man, it's so embedded in assumptions upon assumptions that so here's one. It's a highly contested issue whether or not we've progressed in any moral respect from 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. Some people would say we've lost our way, especially since Vervaeke would say since the invention of vowels, which sounds like it has absolutely nothing to do with this, but that was around the year 1200 as well, or at least the invention of literacy, which was around written word, which is 3,000, I believe, minus.
Curt. If you can get to the understanding that this is the same intelligence talking to itself, can you get to that understanding?
The same intelligence. Look, you mentioned that you don't particularly like my persnickety adherence to detail, but the reason is that you mentioned Gödel. Well, why do you mention Gödel? See, this is what I see I don't mean this as any demeaning quality to the spiritual or New Age community. I just have no other word for that community than like that. And I have the utmost respect. Otherwise, I wouldn't have interviewed people like Bernardo Kastrup and Spira and so on and so on. And in fact, I tend to primarily interview those people because they think contrary to me. I see them as being motivated and not knowing that they're motivated. So, for example, they'll mention Gödel, or they'll mention that the universe looks at a certain scale to have the same connections as neuronal connections. How did Gödel get? How did Gödel get to?
Isn't it just trying to share with you what is right under your nose? Isn't that just trying to share with you what's right under its nose?
When I'm asking for specificity, it's the same process that Gödel did in order to show that set theory as we had it. Well, it's actually even more profound than set theory, but whatever, that a formal system that has certain qualities has truths within it that one can't prove within. Okay, whatever. That was from a deep investigation into the details. And the reason why I pin you down or I'm carping, it's not because I'm trying to prove you wrong in any way, shape, or form. It's because I'm trying to understand, and I know as someone who's studied some topics like mathematics and physics and philosophy extremely deeply, that much of what we think makes sense on the surface upon closer investigation falls apart. It's like you're fighting a ghost, and you don't realize it until you investigate it at its extremes, until you want to know, well, what do you precisely mean by so and so and so and so? And thus, I'm not being unfairly captious. I'm trying to get to the essence. I also know that what can seem like it makes sense on the surface is misleading when tackled from a different angle. So arguments are enthymemic, meaning that they have embedded in them unstated assumptions, and that they take an inordinate amount of time to decompress or to uncompress, sorry. And thus, if you ask me, well, is your awareness, like you asked me a simple question, is awareness aware of awareness? Okay, it seems like it is. Yes. Okay, Curt, why don't you just say it is? Because I don't know if it is. I see it seeming like it is in this moment, but give me enough time and a counter proposition may emerge, or a counter feeling. I'm not going to just sit here and accept what I don't feel is irrefracable. I'm going to attack it, or at least I don't have to attack it. It just comes up, and I'm presenting what appears in my mind. So please don't think of me as being, I don't want you to think I'm being unfair to you. I respect and I love you, but
Me too.
That's what's going through my mind.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. It's a dialectic. It's really, truly just a dialectic. And when I feel into where you're coming from right now, I very much sense a lot of scientific, a lot of logic and a lot of proof. Like, I want proof. But the proof, the most, in a sense, truest proof, is your direct experience above all else. As in, when you become aware that this is one intelligence talking to itself, so it becomes more transpersonal. You've heard that word, right, thrown around before on the shows and in conversation. Does this make sense? Like, it becomes more transpersonal. Like, the whole game of the universe becomes more transpersonal. Like, the Curt boundary, the boundary becomes perforated. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Okay. And so then it becomes your direct experience that the boundary has become perforated. So you went from what is more of like a centralized connectome, neuroscientifically, to what is more of like a decentralized connectome, or a universalized connectome, where you now see that this is one intelligence talking to itself in an explorative way, exploring one of endless possibility through this Earth orbiting the star. And there's many other Earths orbiting stars, and that there's many other potential universes where there are other Earths orbiting stars with other conscious agents that are exploring possibility, right? You sort of following that train a little bit? Okay.
Would you consider them to be, let's get down into the details of this particular statement. Do you consider there to be other universes, or is the fact that it exists and the criteria for it to be in the universe, meaning it exists, imply that there's only one universe? So that is, why don't you just call the collection of them universe? So if there are two universes, the collection is the universe. It's just, let's say, subset of the universe, two subset. So I'm curious, in the definition of universe, does yours include all that there is to reality? Because if that's what it means, then there can't be multiple universes.
Well, just remember that universe means one song. And so the universes, or the multiverse or the metaverse, would mean many songs, potentially up to infinite songs. And so when you begin viewing creation, this universe, as one song, you begin seeing that the amount of possible songs is endless. You'll never come to the end of different ways that you can arrange musical notes into songs. And Curt, okay, if we also stay with the perforation a little bit more.
Let's get back to that. Yeah.
Okay,
dissolution of the boundaries.
Beautiful. So I know that you know, and it's so beautiful because I know you know, and that because you've been searching for, as Rumi says, you've been looking from room to room for the diamond that is already around your neck.
Mm-hmm.
And 6 months ago, boom, I went into a nervous system shock when I finally got what Rumi meant.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain what you mean by nervous system shock? What happened to you?
Well, just like 10 minutes of just curled over in the fetal position because I finally got it, which is I am it. We are it. Exploring.
Okay, here's a counter proposition. Given that the mind is self-deceptive, how do you know that that's not a deception? Given that plenty of what we experience is said to be an illusion, well, how do you know what you just experienced is not just another illusion? Free will is an experience, by the way, but free will is also said to be an illusion. So how do you know that this insight is a reflection of reality rather than the deceptive quality of one's own mind? Simply because you feel it extremely deeply to be true? Is that the criteria? Because if that is the criteria, well, there's plenty of contradictory, deeply felt theories and truths. I hope you don't feel like I'm attacking you, man.
Not at all.
Honestly.
I love you.
Okay.
I love you so much. By the way, I also want to say that this conversation, I feel like, is one of the best ways for the internet, for all of us, to undergo a process of understanding what the nature of reality is. And so I'm feeling a really strong brotherhood between us where we can potentially continue doing this maybe once a quarter or something, where we're just revisiting where we're at in this process of
podcast therapy.
Yeah,
it's like, well, inflorescence, just the blooming of a flower.
Yes.
Watered by time.
Yes. And look at how many people were in the comments saying that we love you both. This is great. Like, I do feel really strong about this because also, Curt, what you're doing in a sense is you're playing, like the question you just asked was so perfect, which is that how do you know that this mind that is so magical, how do you know that it's uniting with the nature of reality and that it's not deceiving you? That's a great question. And so many people want to hear these styles of, this is basically, science and spirituality, which we both represent both. We both represent both. This is them both coming to a union. It's us exploring the synthesis between science and spirituality, which are the two greatest driving forces behind our planet, period. There's nothing that drives us more than those two forces. And so to unite them, to figure out how to unite them, I feel like is the 21st century. This is what we are doing this century, because we're turned inward and we're analyzing more and more of the innerscape at the same time that we're meeting planetary basic needs and we're maximizing our external architectures that enable people to self-actualize and self-realize. And so I'm feeling a really strong resonance between us. And so let's explore what you asked. So
I can restate it if you like.
I have the question.
Okay. There's so many thoughts.
Okay, here. Okay. It's uniting with the force that made you. It's a clear uniting with the force that made you.
Okay, you're giving me an answer. Do you mind telling me the question that you're answering? Because I want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's simply a statement of a fortune cookie. I don't
know. How does one know?
Yes.
When their mystical experience, and again, mysticism just means becoming one with God, means becoming one with the divine. How does one know when they're mystical or yoga means union? How does one know when their union is true versus delusional?
Okay. Well,
Was that the question? That's what it appeared
no,
like.
Because in the question you're assuming an answer, which is the mysticism, which is the unity with God and the yoking. So I'm saying, how do you know that whatever you see is true? Not whether your insight about, not whether or not the union is true. I'm asking, how do you know your felt experience, if what we're taking primary is experience? All right, man, let's do it together.
I love it. Yeah, we're both on the standing game now. To relax the lower back. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and also I'm going to go for a long walk tomorrow, as I mentioned that I've been cooped up and working, and I'm looking forward to having a great rest tonight, man. Appreciate this conversation. I'm having a joy talking to you, and if you want to talk for longer too another time, more than welcome to. Okay, so let me get back to what I was saying, which is that it sounds like you are saying, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is also echoed by people like Spira, which is that experience is primary, and from experience you can derive some truths, and one of these truths are that we're all one, and that all there is experience, or all there is awareness, sometimes awareness being aware of awareness, but awareness nonetheless. And I am asking, how does one know your experience of so-and-so? Well,
uniting with the force that gave rise to you was my answer to that question.
Okay, you're saying it's true because it's uniting.
It's true because that's good. I like that. And then how about also it's true because there's an experience of basically uniting with the energy that gave rise to you, the force that gave rise to you, the force that gives rise to all life. When people talk about oneness or unity, it's like uniting with that force itself that gave rise. If we play with the Big Bang Theory, it would be like uniting with the force that gave rise to the Big Bang. That would be what.
Okay, now let me see if I can correct that. Mm-hmm. And if this correction is apt. Is it more like realizing that you're uniting? Because one cannot help but unite. They can only realize that this uniting is occurring all the time.
Yeah, realizing. Yeah, that's why it's called self-realization or God realization. It's a realization.
What's actualization mean then? Sometimes people say self-actualization. Yes, is that a synonym? And if they're different, how are they different?
I love this. Beautiful question. So when you view self-realization or God realization, that is the turn inward and uniting with that force that gave rise to you, like we were just discussing. And then self-actualization is more like the Tony Robbins style, or like Gary Vaynerchuk style, like executing a dream, like actualizing your unique firework of life. So it's a little bit more around empowerment versus enlightenment, but those two are the same side of the coin, two different sides of the same coin. So self-actualization and self-realization are actually one. So most people, when they go outward to actualize something, that's like what I've noticed is that people from mainstream society, the first thing that they do is they go on a hero's journey, which is self-actualization. They usually go into the unknown to try and go through some challenges and obstacles to gain some sort of profound insight, treasure, and then to bring that back to their community. And so it's usually people leaving the 9-to-5, pursuing entrepreneurship, stuff like that. And then what happens is they also undergo a process of the turn inward in understanding, well, what is the nature of consciousness? What is the nature of my reality at a deeper level than the material aims that I have? And so that's usually where those two end up meeting. Why do you ask? But I also would like to play with the perforation a little bit more of your essence, because I feel like that's where for a moment, like we had something so unique there, which was that you knew that becoming transpersonal was key. So maybe we play on like what have been your experiences with becoming more perforated or transpersonal.
Well, I've had experiences where I've felt as if what I am is tentacle in an octopus, and that going back to the source shares me with everyone, though we're all connected and we're temporarily differentiated. But then again, I say I've had that experience, and in some ways I think it's true, but in some ways I don't take my experiences or what is said with agreement in the scientific or even spiritual community as apodictic, like most people. I wonder what's the alternative, and I'm just not sold. I'm just not sold on it. It could be true, but then at the same time, then I wonder, even if it is true, is it saying anything that's not a tautology? So, for example, Rupert Spira seems to be saying something both non-trivial and trivial at the same time. Experience is experience seems to me to be at the bottom of what he's saying, which is a tautology. So I don't know.
I love it. What a beautiful experience that you've had, a beautiful realization that you've had, because in essence, that's what science is even pointing to, in the same way that spirituality has been pointing to for millennia, which is that there's this unified differentiation, and then the differentiation wakes up to its unification.
So here's a question I have for you.
Yeah.
How does fractionation occur from unity?
It's beautiful. I know it's the most unbelievably profound thing. Through what we hypothesize, one of the ways we hypothesize this is there's a veil of forgetting. That's one of the components that's really important. So you know upon differentiation that there's a veil of forgetting that has to be pierced through to remember. So it's like hide and seek. You see the archetype in kids, and you see the archetype in animals even. The hide and seek style archetype is sort of like the game that is being played. So there's some sort of a veil that has to be pierced through to remember this, which is profound. Yeah, go ahead.
If there's a reason to forgetting, just like kids playing hide and seek, that also seems to me like that's on purpose. Maybe it's dangerous to remember. Is there a danger to remembering? Perfect. Like, why should we remember, even if it's true?
Perfect. Exactly.
If this infinite being is far greater and far more elucidated than us, and it said, hey, man, you should differentiate, and then we're coming back and saying, no, we should unify, and in fact, that's the highest good. How do we know?
It's perfect. I love this. This is the exact riddle to the universe. This is the exact riddle to infinity expressing itself, is this, which is that you purposely refracted and differentiated to explore and play. Why would you pierce through this veil and become unified again when the whole point was to differentiate? And it's a beautiful question, and it's the riddle, because you do both simultaneously, where you pierce through this veil and remember, so you don't create unnecessary malevolence because you think that people are separate from the same unified life force. But then while you pierce through that veil and remember, you also express yourself differently. You don't forget that Curt is uniquely, beautifully differentiated than Atlas, than Rupert, than Donald, than Chris.
You call yourself Atlas or Alan?
You can call me Atlas. Yeah. It's
okay,
it's sort of.
Is this new?
Yeah, it's since about 2 years ago. One of my friends came up.
Search results.
Google thought I was talking to.
About 2 years ago, one of my friends came through and was like, Atlas is what I feel like is your name. And then only recently, about 8 months ago or so, did I make the transition fully to just one word, Atlas, as my name, from Alan Sakyan, which
so
some people.
Officially.
It's been great, bro. Yeah. It's been great. And Atlas has a lot of profound, cartography is one of the things that I'm most interested in, right? Some sort of cartography around the nature of reality. That's why we're here together, bro. You're literally mapping the landscape of the theories of everything. And I have the same style of passion to this. And we're both young. You're like 30, right?
32.
32. And I'm 28. We're both right there, bro. That's our little average age right there. Yep.
Okay. You just said that's the mystery of the universe. Is that, well, the point is to do both? Is that what you said?
Yes, because everyone promulgates oneness when they're like, people are awake. They're like, it's one planet. So there's some people see it from a physicalism perspective, and they see it like there's only one planet. There's 10 million species. They're all there. It's like the Gaia thing. Everything evolved on the planet. So there's the oneness mentality there. And then there's the people that turn inward to consciousness, and then they say oneness, and they say unification, and they say that. But meanwhile, the whole point of this process was to differentiate. And so then you have the people that are like hyper differentiation oriented. And so they're the ones that are like, everyone actualized their unique firework into the arena of reality. And so you have to merge the two. The reason why it's the riddle is because you have to merge unification and differentiation.
Well, this to me, again, is why I see non-dualism as thinly veiled nihilism, because if the point of existence is to merge what's been differentiated, that's predicated on the differentiation. And the differentiated people are considered to be evil, which means we need the evil, which sounds to me like an argument for not doing good nor evil, because either are okay.
Yeah, just so I would take one step back from there, and I would say that so differentiation does not necessarily equate with ignorance or evil and whatnot. I would potentially say that if you can if you can pierce through the veil and merge unification and differentiation simultaneously, you can have what is like the most holistic understanding of how infinity expresses itself as realities. So there's one unified force, but it purposely differentiates itself to undergo this play and to pierce through this veil, to remember itself, and then to express itself from the place of remembrance. Do you see that last key? So if you express yourself from the place of solely differentiation, you will not know that you come from the same unified force. But if you first unite with the unified force and then express yourself like a firework, you'll come from a place of unity as you differentially express yourselves. And so that's why the phrase, you gotta go inward first to go outward right, it's the sure cause of delight. You got to go inward first to go outward right. It's the sure cause of delight. Yeah. But you can go outward from a place of not going inward first, and that's still just as beautiful at the same time. So because it's the way that infinity is expressing itself as somebody that chooses to not go inward first, and they choose to pursue material. They choose to pursue clout or money or fame, or seeking worthiness, or seeking validation from other people. And so that's also a unique exploration at the same time. But eventually, you're probably familiar with things like the parable of the prodigal son. You'll get a nice little sledgehammer. The drill sergeant of awakening, suffering, comes with a sledgehammer and whaps you on the forehead, and it forces you to turn inward because you don't actually get any long-term peace and happiness from acquiring material possessions or acquiring clout or fame or trying to extract worthiness or validation from people. And so the turn inward is almost inevitable, which is part of, it's like an attractor. This is where you might resonate with this. It's like an attractor, Curt. It's like you have this complex mathematics that the universe is evolving towards, which is, in a sense, life waking up and then turning inwards to understand itself as the unified force that differentiated. But you got this. You're right there with me.
I know, but most people, I'm sure you would say, are right there anyway, because it's always with us. At least that's what the claim is.
Yeah. You can't not be. You're tethered to it.
I still don't see how or why an undifferentiated entity even conceivably can differentiate. Because let's say it picks a point to do so. That point would have to be distinguished. But we already said there's no distinguishing feature. So how do you distinguish without distinguishing?
Your question is, again, I feel like it is literally the most important question in the nature of reality. And I feel like one of the only ways to artistically be able to express this to kids is by looking at how white light refracts prismatically into the rainbow gradient, because that is sort of how this looks like, where you have this unified, undifferentiated light that then refracts into the prismatic differentiation, which sort of looks like, in a sense, the evolution of awareness or consciousness waking up to, itself.
That's an argument for pluralism to begin with, though, because if we investigate that analogy a bit further, the white light was never white. The white light was multitudinous to begin with. So if you can give me a different analogy, that would help.
So inherent in the white, well, isn't this the case that inherent in the white light is the potentiality for the differentiation?
No, inherent, sorry, not don't mean to say no like so arrogantly, but white light comprises different colors from the get-go. There's no such photon as a white photon. So if you were to stop any individual one, you could detect its frequency, which is the same as its color. Yes, the prism doesn't take white light and then create multiple different strands. That's already there in the white light. So again, I'll ask my question, which is, how is it from a place of non-duality where there is no...
You said it's inherent in the source light, right? Isn't that the kind of the point? Is that inherent in the infinity expressing itself is the ability to differentiate and then undergo this creative process?
Okay, what I want to know is, how do you differentiate? Where do you differentiate if there is no difference? So how do you differentiate here, over here? Is it random? Well, then is there a random number generator that's outside the universe? Is the random generator a part of the universe? Then there's the universe plus a random generator. Well, is that not a distinct entity? So the universe is a random number generator at the same, like, that's what I'm saying. And then if you have a random number generator, well, then you have obviously differences in digits, which is not non-dual. So this is what I'm wondering. What allows for this differentiation from undifferentiated material when that's all that there is? All there is undifferentiation.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Beautiful.
I'm asking. I'm like genuinely curious. I don't know how to. It's like squaring a circle. I don't understand it. I don't know how to do it.
And the same thing is true on my end, which is that I can't speak to how the unbounded mystery that we are is truly being played. We can only create maps that get close to the territory. And so that's what we're doing right now, is we're talking about maps that try their best to get as close to the territory as possible. It's almost like the best thing that the intelligence can do with itself is undergo the process of forgetting. And as it remembers, it tries to make maps of itself. And so one of my hypotheses is that Benoit Mandelbrot, that the infinite fractal zoom is as close of a approximation as we can get to how the infinite intelligence works, because you said in your last couple of sentences that there's a random number generator. So there's something that's absolutely chaotic about it, but at the same time, there's something that's self-similar and purposeful about it. And so that's what it seems like, is that you have both merged together, where you have it's like a chef. If you viewed God or the supreme intelligence that we are as a chef, we know both what tastes good in our food, which is basically this, this two-eyed, four-limbed DNA encoded vehicle. But also we want to taste new qualities in our food. And so we also are randomly adding things into our expressions, creative expressions, that we then see how they unfold. How does that play with you?
From what you've said, it doesn't sound like non-duality to me. It sounds like there's dualities all over the place. And
have you ever heard of how the non-duality and duality and individuation are all simultaneously true? Have you ever heard that from a guest?
No.
Okay.
No.
So this is what we call true simultaneity. So there's the reason why you have people like Rupert and many other people that basically, and you've heard Bernardo even say this on the show before as well, but the only reason why he comes in with the position of metaphysical idealism is to shift people towards that, but not to say that then physicalism is untrue. Because what you want to do is you want to hold that both are true simultaneously. Consciousness is dependent on physicalism, just like physicalism is dependent on consciousness. They're both dependent on one another. And so that's where you get the simultaneity, where you have both non-duality and duality and individuation that all happen simultaneously.
Are they both equal to one another, or are they just dependent on one another?
It feels like they codependently are part of the architecture. Everything is codependently part of the architecture. Non-duality, duality, individuation is all codependently part of the architecture. You'll never be able to get away with having only one of them. You have to always be able to refer to all of them at the same time. That's what a Jedi is. A Jedi is somebody that can navigate into the space of non-duality, have a conversation. Go to the space of duality, have a conversation. Go to the space of individuation and self-actualization and have a conversation. And that's what I feel like you're doing. That's what I feel like I've been doing, is we've been training like Jedis to become polymaths, to be able to navigate the space like a Jedi. And then that's what sort of gives you the most holistic understanding of what the nature is.
Okay, let me get technical here. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. And then let's wrap, because I know you have to go soon, right?
Okay. But I eminently am enjoying this conversation and would like to continue.
Me too, bro. Me too.
Okay. So is the architecture more fundamental than the entities that are dependent on it? So you're saying there's duality, non-duality, individuation, and then there's the architecture that unites them in some way, shape, or form. So is this architecture the birthplace?
Potentially, yes. And also what makes the environment the birthplace, and also what sustains the substrate of what this is. Yeah.
Okay, so it's the soil. So it's like soil. What?
Yeah, or ground is another way to potentially put it. It's like a groundless ground.
Is the architecture possible without the flower that it sprouts?
I feel like those have to codependently arise.
Okay, so then let me get technical. To say so architecture, if architecture, then duality. If duality, then architecture.
Say that one more time.
If architecture, then duality. If duality, then architecture.
Say that another way. I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So if there is the architecture, then it's necessary that there's duality as well as non-duality. Let's just say non-duality for the sake of this. So if there's the architecture, then there's non-duality. If non-duality exists, then the architecture exists. Is that a correct statement or no? If they're codependent. So you're mentioning codependency.
Codependency. Okay. Yes.
So let's say architecture exists. Great. Architecture is my little lip balm here. So if this guy exists, does necessarily non-dualism exist? So if this, does this necessarily exist? Non-dualism. Non-dualism is blue. Architecture is green.
Oh, I see I think I see what you're saying. Yeah. Well, doesn't that also kind of play into what we were saying a moment ago with how consciousness and physicalism are ultimately one?
Well, you were saying that. Yes, I understand.
Well, because you can't have, in a sense, you can't have consciousness without physicalism, and you can't have physicalism without consciousness. You can't have a reality without observation, but you also can't have observation without reality. So the two are one, yeah.
Okay, because then if that's true, then mathematically one would say they're equivalent. And then, because if you have an if-then statement in both directions, you have what's called an if and only if. Okay, so then, and that means they're isomorphic. Okay, now if they're isomorphic, that means you can replace one with the other. And so why is the prevailing place given to non-dualism over dualism or over the architecture?
And I feel like this is exactly what I was referencing with why Bernardo Kastrup and why he and others have said that they're not trying to, they're just trying to help people shift to become aware of the unity, because they feel like by becoming aware of what he calls metaphysical idealism, by shifting into that position, it creates more of a sense of unity and oneness, which then when you build from that position, you can actually actualize the planet's potential at a higher degree than if you were building from the place of separation and from the place of differentiation only without having tasted the unity. And so it's almost like a temporary prioritization for the turn inward in order to maximize the exterior architectural potential.
Okay. You're saying in order to. So is that goal higher than the truth that apparently is used to derive the potential to execute on that goal? So for example, if non-dualism led to a place of destruction for the earth, would you still advocate for non-dualism? Let's hypothetically. Now you may say logically that's impossible, but I'm saying hypothetically, and I'm sure people can entertain what's logically impossible. So what would you do?
If somehow the turn into
maniacally
oneness,
laughing.
If somehow the turn into oneness created more planetary catastrophe than separation.
Yeah, well, here's one way. I mean, it's not so out of left field, because in some sense narcissism is self-love and exaggerated self-love. Someone may say that that's not love at all, but then you're just quibbling over what love is. And no, that's not quibbling. Like, that's a serious issue, but it's not as if what love is trivial. So let's say narcissism, for the sake of this argument, is self-love, or overly so. Well, if we're all connected, why is self-love not the same as loving everyone else if we're all the same? So if one has narcissism, why is that not a net increment to society rather than a decrement? Okay, so one can see how oneness can lead to a destruction of the earth, potentially in a hypothetical universe. Now, I'm asking, if that is the case, would you still follow oneness, or do you serve life higher than that? Like, what's your God? Is your God oneness, or is your God humanity?
Well, it's the simultaneity. Which is what we were talking about a moment ago, where you can hold both oneness and differentiation at the same time. And if you can do that, then you can have the most holistic picture on how infinity expresses itself. which is what you are. You're not separate from infinity expressing itself. You are the same force that gave rise to you. And so if you know that it's both unified and differentiated, you can have the most holistic perspective and have the most, as you actualize yourself, as you firework yourself, you can have it be in the most prosperous way for yourself and the collective, because you come from the place of being truly Gnostic. Gnosis means that you have full knowledge of the nature in your being. And so when you come from a Gnostic place, you express yourself in the most coherent, most benevolent way. It's actually what Lao Tzu called Wu Wei. It's called effortless action. It's effortless because you are a Gnostic being, because you know the Tao. You are the Tao. You are it. And when you're it, you don't commit malevolence. You purify your beingness to not commit malevolence.
Let me restate the question, because I'm not seeing the answer I'm not hearing how what you say connects to the question. The question is, if the choice was, if what came with oneness was the destruction of the planet, would you still advocate for oneness? Hypothetically, I know you may say that's impossible. Well, even if you say that's impossible, then you're putting a limit on an infinite potential. So you're saying some of what is within this non-dual immaterial.
Oh, that's a great point right
architecture
there, is that you can't put a limit on the infinite potential, which means that there are civilizations that potentially emerge that get so turned into oneness that somehow that turns into a disastrous scenario. That's cool.
Yes. Okay. So would you still advocate for oneness if oneness would lead to planetary destruction, let's say? Well, hypothetically.
The beauty of the question is we just went through one of those explorations where, as infinity expresses itself, are there potentialities where a civilization becomes overly, excessively oneness and unity oriented to where it somehow blows itself up based on that? And is that a possibility? In infinite potential, we're playing with infinite possibility. So that could be, in fact, happening right now. And actually, to a certain extent, isn't that what we saw with the 20th century? We saw that with when you go overly collectivist and you don't have an equal amount of individuation and sovereignty with the individual, that's where you have the disastrous tens of millions of deaths across the overly collectivist style of, yeah.
Yes. Okay. But now what it sounds like an argument for pragmatism rather than truth, as in the objective sense of truth or the correspondence sense, because you're saying what we need is a balance. Well, how is that balance? We need a balance between non-dualism and separation, or dualism, or plurality. Okay,
why don't we keep calling it non-duality and individuation? Seems to be a good way to put it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Between non-duality
and individuation.
Oneness and individuation. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, then what you say, you use the word extreme. Now, to use the word extreme already implies a value. Now, you've already valued the wholeness of the oneness of the planet, or the thriving of people, or the lessening of suffering, and so on. But that to me sounds pragmatic and not with respect to the what's true. Like, I understand that in pragmatism they have a different definition of truth, but if you're using that definition of truth, then that's great. We need to know that. But if you're saying it's objectively true, like there's the correspondence theory of truth, there's something that's outside me that these words are somehow isomorphic to, then right.
Do you remember the story that you gave about your transpersonal experience where you felt like a tentacle of the cosmic octopus? So that is individuation in non-duality. So it's an absolute centerlessness, which is the big cosmic storm that we are, simultaneously as it is that you are a unique individuation. You're the unique tentacle in that cosmic storm. But in order to understand that you are the cosmic storm, you have to, in a sense, you have to perforate your skin so that you can burst outside of the contracted identity of solely being an individual to also being the universe expressing itself as also Curt simultaneously, right? And I would say that's the one thing that oneness goes really far to the extreme on, and individuation goes really far to the extreme on. And if we can synthesize them into a unity, that's where the mwah is.
When you say, that's something I'm getting at that I wasn't able to express before, and forgive me if I'm loose with my words. It's difficult for me to hold on to right now. You're using the word extreme. Now, what makes you say extreme? There's a value embedded in that. Then how do you get that value? Where are you getting this value from to say that something is extreme versus not?
Good. Well, we have at least our N of one, our own civilization, where we saw in the 20th century, we saw that shift into hyper collectivism that turned very disastrous. And we've also seen in the West, we've seen an overly excessive focus on individualism as well. And that from at least our N of one, we see that there are extremes. Actually, in Better Left Unsaid, your documentary, you explored one of those extremes, right? And so now you see where the extreme on the political right in the US and the extreme on the political left in the US have their own disastrous codes. And then if you can gain a higher level awareness where you can hold both of those political sides and sort of archive the codes that are malevolent and uplift the codes that are good and merge them. That's the same thing with individualism and collectivism, non-duality and individuation, the political left and political right in the US and China. You can keep going with these dichotomies because what you want to do is you want to take the best from the two and merge them into one rather than keep playing with the polar negatives on each one of them. And that's called what I call the sorting algorithm. That's from chapter 7 of High Level Perception, the first visual synthesis that I did. And actually, I got the words sorting algorithm from Brett Weinstein when he was moderating the debate between Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris in Vancouver. He said, when they were talking about science and spirituality and how to merge the two, Brett said, so Jordan, you have a sorting algorithm of sorts. And so that's where it was ding, 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 ding. That's what we're looking for. How do you sort the good stuff of non-duality? How do you sort the good stuff of individualism or science and spirituality or the US and China or the left and the right? And how do you merge them? That's what.
Alan, what I'm wondering, I know we got to get going. What I'm wondering is you use the word good there. There's much language that's value laden. And I'm wondering, where are you getting the value from? That's what I'm wondering. So when you say extreme, when you say good, why is this good and this not? And why is this extreme and this not? That's basically what I'm wondering.
So the one force that we are undergoes a process of figuring out what is most good to bring up. So we have to go through our process of sense making, right? Did you have Daniel Schmachtenberger on yet? Okay, so his thing is, communal sense making. And so we have to go through a process of figuring out how to make sense of what is good from these supposedly dual sides, and then to merge them into one. So it's not that Atlas or Curt or Rupert or Bernardo or whoever has the answer to what is good and everybody should follow that leader, but it's more like a decentralized swarm intelligence that is the life force that we are, figures out what is good, and then ends up fireworking that.
We're going to have to cut this conversation short, man. We'll
That's
continue
beautiful.
later.
Yeah, that's so good. Wow.
Thank you so much, man.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
I feel
by
you.
the way, how did you find out about the channel, and what made you reach out to me? Or I may have reached out to you. I don't recall.
Actually, remember I think it was in the middle of 2020. That's when you started the channel, right? Yep. Okay. So about a year ago. I was so happy that you existed, and I still am. I'm so happy because there was nobody that was doing it yet. And then you filled the spot because nobody was doing it. Nobody was interviewing these greatest minds and then trying to figure out a landscape of the theories of everything. And as soon as I saw your channel go up, I was just so pumped and so jacked, and then you did what most people can't do, which is not only did you come up with the idea, it came through you to do this, but then furthermore is you did it for a year, and you've grown such a tremendous catalog of content and a tremendous free educational library around this. And then, so you've provided this great resource for people, and you've created somewhat of a monetization stability for yourself to ensure that you can independently continue doing what you're passionate about. And so I'm so jacked. But of course, take the 2 weeks of time just to rejuvenate yourself, my brother. Give your heart and your mind and your gut and your wife and just give yourself the space to just relax into the profundity of who you are and what you've achieved. Congratulate yourself for that period of a couple weeks. And then, get back to it.
How long have you been doing this for? I know that yours is also extremely personal. Sorry, in person. It started out as events, as far as I know.
Yeah.
How long has that been going on? How long has the podcast been going on? And what's your goal with it?
In 2015, I initially started asking people on the streets thought-provoking questions. So about 6 years ago. And then I transitioned to hosting a science comedy show in San Francisco. And then I transitioned to hosting Simulation in 2017, which is where I was just asking these greatest minds these thought-provoking questions.
Quite young to do that. Congrats, man. You're like
Thanks,
24.
bro. At that time, exactly 24. Yep, bro. Yep. But I feel like that's 14-year-olds and 18-year-olds to begin asking these big questions at those teenage years. And in doing so, they can rocket themselves forward at unprecedented rates. Yeah.
Yeah. I had got to get going. I've been surprised that most of my audience is actually not young. I mean, there are quite a few young people, but most of them they're far older than you would think. There's some are 60, 70, some are professors. Oh man.
Yes, bro.
Gosh.
Yes.
To receive an email from a professor or multiple is like a huge compliment, because those are the toughest crowds. And like, I used to do stand-up, and there are some crowds that are tough. Well, in this space, a professor is a tough crowd. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, well.
We have a lot of love from our audience, and we love you guys. Thank you so much. We're so grateful. You guys are coming from both of our channels, and we're so grateful that you love this and that we're going to come back. I feel like Curt and I, hopefully once every quarter or something, we'll back.
Check in with one another. Yeah,
exactly. And thank you, everyone, and infinite love for you. Let us know how you feel about the episode in the comments below. We would love to hear from you. That simultaneity around non-duality and individuation and dualism, all this type of stuff. And also like the video and help that YouTube algorithm. Also check out the links in the bio to subscribing to Curt's channel. Also, you can find his recent documentary, Better Left Unsaid, down there as well. And subscribe to our channel, Simulation, if you haven't yet. Share this video on Theories of Everything, where we have this conversation with other people that you feel like this would profoundly resonate with. And that is all. We love you, fam. Anything else, Curt?
Yeah, what I'm trying to build with Theories of Everything is both, I don't want to use the word 2.0, it's so old now, but something like Science 2.0 or Science 3.0, think about this. Science progressed. It wasn't science before, and then it became this now, which means that you can wonder, just a thought experiment, what will it be? And what's the criteria for what makes something science? And partly what I'm doing with theories of everything is not only advancing the state of theories of everything by explicating toes, but also what does the next science look like? I have a couple of names for it. One is, I can't pronounce it, but abgenosis. And the reason why is because abgena means knowledge, and to the eastern end is a specific kind of knowledge, and then gnosis obviously means knowledge to the west. And I imagine that there's going to be an integration of the two. I also imagine that there's going to be a third. I don't see why there's just a dichotomy. Maybe there's one that we haven't come up with. We think experience is primary now, but maybe 100 years from now, it's beyond, it's transcended experience and rationality. It's something else. I don't know. It sounds, I don't know, but either way, I'm trying to build that with the channel. I also have a Discord on the channel. For the channel, for this. So join go to theories of everything, search theories of everything on YouTube. You'll see it. It apparently looks like a Reese's peanut butter cup logo.
The link is in the bio below. And also
are you vegan?
Discord. Am I
vegan?
Oh, no, no. But I'm not especially carnivorous either, but I don't have a food.
Honestly,
do you?
I'm just rapacious. No, I eat whatever most of the time.
Yeah.
I don't like fish. I don't like seafood, but except salmon. I like salmon.
By the way, we had another. Remember, I messaged you. This Brando from our channel said, "Hope we have an episode with Frank Yang. I think Curt can make amazing interview with him." Remember, I messaged you and said that it could be good for you to have Frank Yang and Bentinho Massaro on the show for Theories of Everything. So that's something to also consider. I will message you about it again. We'll talk about it again right after this. Okay, love you guys. I'm going to end the broadcast. We'll stay in the studio for just a minute. We'll talk to you guys soon. We'll see you on again soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you.